The Grand Hall of Unity on Concord Prime was a masterpiece of architectural intimidation. It was a cavernous space of white marble and transparent aluminum that hung suspended in the upper atmosphere of the capital world, offering a dizzying view of the golden clouds below. 10,000 delegates from the Galactic Concord stood in rigid formation, their ceremonial armor polishing the light of the 3 artificial suns drifting overhead. Lyra Vile stood near the back of the Valorian delegation, fighting the urge to yawn. As a third princess of a minor mid-rim world, her presence was mandatory but irrelevant. She adjusted the stiff collar of her dress uniform, her violet eyes scanning the room with a boredom she had perfected over 25 years of royal etiquette training. Today was Human Exile Day. It was the 300th anniversary of the Great Cleansing, the day the Galactic Concord had united to drive the scourge of humanity into the Dead Rim. On the central dais, High Chancellor Vrex, a towering reptilian figure draped in shimmer silk, raised his claws. A holographic projection the size of a mountain flickered into existence above the assembly. It showed grainy, edited footage from 3 centuries ago. Human ships, depicted as jagged and ugly monstrosities, were shown firing upon defenseless orbital habitats. "We remember the terror," Vrex boomed, his voice amplified by the acoustic dampeners. "We remember the greed. The human species sought to devour our resources, to break the sacred laws of the Concord. They were a virus, and we were the cure." The crowd erupted in polite, synchronized applause. Lyra did not clap. She watched the hologram closely. The historical records always seemed too clean, too convenient. The humans in the footage moved with chaotic aggression, like rabid animals. Yet she had read obscure engineering texts suggesting human warp drives were mathematically elegant. It was a contradiction that had always nagged at her. How could a species be both mindless savages and capable of interstellar flight? The projection shifted to show the Dead Rim, a swirling abyss of radiation and unstable gravity wells on the edge of the galaxy. "We exiled them to the dark," Vrex continued, "and there they perished. Let their silence be our peace." As the applause swelled again, a commotion rippled through the sector reserved for the Reformist Party. Senator Thrax, an elderly avian diplomat who had recently been calling for an audit of the military budget, stood up. He looked frail, his feathers gray and molting, but his voice cut through the cheer. "This is a lie!" Thrax shouted, his translator device screeching with feedback. "The archives are incomplete. We have found discrepancies in the energy readings. The humans did not start the..." The sound of the shot was not loud. It was a wet thud, followed by the hiss of cauterized flesh. Senator Thrax collapsed, a smoking hole in his chest. Panic did not erupt immediately. For a second, the hall was frozen in absolute silence. Lyra, trained in hunting by her father before the Concord turned him into a desk-bound administrator, did not look at the fallen senator. She looked for the origin of the shot, high above, on the maintenance gantry. A figure in the black and gold armor of the Concord Praetorian Guard lowered a pulse rifle. Lyra's breath hitched. It was not a rogue assassin. It was the state security apparatus itself. Before the scream of the crowd began, Lyra saw the guard tap his helmet and vanish into the shadows of the rafters. The High Chancellor did not look surprised. He merely signaled for the medical drones, his expression one of tragic resignation. "A tragic accident," Vrex announced, his voice smooth as oil. "A reminder that madness still lingers in our galaxy." Lyra lowered her gaze, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was not madness. This was a purge. 2 weeks later, the glittering boredom of diplomatic service was a memory. Lyra sat in a windowless room deep beneath the Ministry of Intelligence, the air recycling system humming a low, headache-inducing note. Director Kalen sat across from her. He was a creature of indeterminate species, his skin a translucent blue that revealed the pulsing of veins beneath. He slid a data slate across the metal table. "You noticed the gunman," Kalen said. "It was not a question. I saw a shadow." Lyra lied smoothly. "I assume the investigation is ongoing." "Do not play games with me, princess," Kalen said, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "You tracked the security signature of the rifle using your diplomatic clearance codes. You traced the funding for the weapon to a shell company in the Cayman Nebula. You possess an aptitude for patterns that is wasted on ribbon-cutting ceremonies." Lyra went still. She had thought her digital footprint was hidden. "I did," she admitted. "And what did you find?" "Nothing," Lyra said. "The trail vanished into the Defense Ministry budget." "Precisely." Kalen leaned back. Senator Thrax was becoming a liability, but not because of his budget audits. He was digging into the Red Archive. Lyra knew the rumor. The Red Archive was the graveyard of classified data, the place where the Concord buried truths too dangerous to exist. "We need someone who can see patterns where others see noise," Kalen said. "We are promoting you, Lyra. You are now a Level 4 analyst for covert intelligence. Your first assignment is to finish what Thrax started. Find out who funded his death." "Why?" Lyra asked. "If the Defense Ministry ordered it." "Because," Kalen interrupted, "even the Defense Ministry has factions. Someone is cleaning house, and I want to know why before they decide intelligence is next." Lyra accepted the slate. It was the heaviest object she had ever held. Over the next month, Lyra lived in the digital dark. She slept 4 hours a night. She stopped attending galas. She became a ghost in the machine, sifting through fragments of data that had been deleted, overwritten, and deleted again. She found the holes in history. In the official narrative, the human exile was a unanimous decision by the Galactic Council. But in the fragments of the Red Archive, she found reference to a peace delegation that had vanished 3 days before the war began. She found corrupted battle footage from the final stand at the Rim, images not of humans firing first, but of human ships transmitting surrender codes that were jammed by Concord frequencies. And then she found the anomaly. It was a sensor ghost, a blip on a long-range buoy near the dead Rim. It was dated 48 hours ago. Lyra isolated the signal. It was faint, buried under layers of cosmic radiation, but it was structured. It was not random noise. She ran it through the universal translator, but the logic matrix failed. She switched to the archaic linguist database, the one her father had forced her to memorize as a child. It was a harmonic code, a mathematical sequence based on prime numbers, wrapped around a carrier wave of spoken audio. Lyra filtered the static. A voice, clear and cold, cut through the speakers. "Marking Vector 39. We are returning." It was a human voice. She stared at the screen, a chill seizing her spine. Humans were extinct. The dead Rim was a meat grinder. Nothing could survive there for 300 years. Before she could log the find, the station's alert klaxons screamed. The sound was a physical blow, a rising and falling wail that meant maximum danger. The door to her office hissed open. 2 armed guards stood there. "Director Kalen requires your presence in the war room," one barked. "Now." The war room was a chaos of light and shouting. A 3-dimensional map of the sector dominated the center of the room. High Chancellor Vrex was there, along with the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff. On the main screen, a live feed from the dead Rim patrol fleet played. "It's impossible." A general was shouting, "Their signatures are off the scale." On the screen, The void of space was tearing open. It wasn't the blue swirl of a standard Concorde warp gate. It was a violent, crimson tear, as if the universe itself was bleeding. From the wound in reality, ships emerged. They did not look like the jagged scrap heaps of the historical hollows. These vessels were sleek, sculpted from a matte black material that seemed to absorb the starlight. They were shaped like spearheads, predatory and silent. No engine flares were visible, only a faint distortion ripple around their hulls. "Open fire!" the general screamed. The Concorde patrol ships, heavy cruisers bristling with plasma cannons, unleashed a torrent of green fire. The energy bolts streaked toward the black ships. Lyra watched, horrified. The plasma hit the lead black ship and dissipated. A shimmering geometric grid appeared over the black hull for a fraction of a second, absorbing the impact completely. The black ships did not return fire. They did not launch missiles. They did not fire beams. Instead, a pulse of indigo light rippled out from the lead vessel. It passed through the Concorde cruisers. Instantly, the Concorde ships went dark. Their engines died. Their weapons powered down. They were left drifting, dead metal in the void. "Report!" Vrex roared. "Life signs on the patrol fleet are stable," a technician stammered, his voice trembling. "They didn't kill them. They just turned them off. 100% survival rate. All systems disabled." Silence descended on the war room. The Concorde had been built on the idea that humans were rabid dogs. Rabid dogs did not disable their enemies with surgical precision. One of the black ships, a small scout vessel, had separated from the main fleet during the maneuver. It had moved too deep into the gravity well of a nearby moon and had been tractored in by a secondary defense platform before its engines could cycle. "We have a captive," the general said, his eyes wide. "A scout ship. We are towing it to the Black Site station. Send an interrogation team," Vrex ordered, his face pale. "I want to know what they are." Director Kalen turned to Lyra. "You speak the old tongue," he said, "and you have studied their history. Pack your bags, princess. You are going to meet a ghost." The interrogation block on the Black Site station was sterile, white, and smelled of ozone. Lyra stood behind the one-way mirror, her hands trembling slightly. Inside the cell, a man sat on a simple metal chair. He had been stripped of his armor, leaving him in a dark gray bodysuit that clung to a lean, muscular frame. He was not the hairy, hunchbacked savage the propaganda posters depicted. He was terrifyingly normal. He had dark hair, cut short and practical. His skin was pale, as if he had spent a lifetime away from a sun, but it was his eyes that held Lyra. They were dark, intelligent, and disturbingly calm. He was handcuffed to the table, but he did not look like a prisoner. He looked like a man waiting for a train. "Go in," Kalen ordered through her earpiece. "Assess his psychological state. Determine the fleet's weakness." Lyra took a breath, smoothed her uniform, and swiped her keycard. The door hissed open. The man looked up as she entered. He tracked her movement with a predatory grace, his eyes noting the rank insignia on her collar, the slight tremor in her hand, the weapon on her hip. "Please, sit down," Lyra said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. She kept her distance. The man smiled. It was not a nice smile, but it wasn't cruel either. It was the smile of someone who knew a joke that no one else understood. "You are the welcome committee?" he asked. His voice was deep, the accent sharp and archaic. It sounded like gravel rolling over velvet. "I am Intelligence Officer Vael," Lyra said, taking her seat. "I am here to ask you questions. I bet you are," the man said. He leaned forward, the chains rattling. "You can call me Cassian." "Cassian," Lyra repeated, testing the name. Cassian Rook? That is what my mother called me when she was angry. Lyra opened her digital notepad. We have analyzed your ship. The technology, it does not match any known conquered paradigm. Your propulsion, your shielding. Where did you get it? We built it, Cassian said simply. That is impossible, Lyra countered, her voice gaining strength. The Dead Rim is a resource-poor wasteland. There are no heavy metals, no stable isotopes. You were sent there to die. Cassian's expression shifted. The humor vanished, replaced by a cold, hard gravity. You sent us to the dark, he said softly. You locked the gates. You erased our names. You thought the radiation would cook us, or the starvation would break us. He leaned back, the metal chair creaking. But you forgot what we are. Officer Vial, humans do not break when the world ends. We adapt. We scraped minerals from the asteroids. We built habitats in the gravity shadows of black holes. We learned to weave the fabric of space because we had no fuel to burn. He looked directly into her eyes, and Lyra felt a sudden vertigo. He wasn't lying. They exiled humanity, Cassian said, his voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the sterile room. Yet the human empire came back, and no force could stand against what we became. Lyra stared at him. It was the way he said it, not as a threat, but as a simple statement of fact, like saying the sun would rise, or gravity would pull. You speak of an empire, Lyra said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Yet your fleet disabled our ships instead of destroying them. If you are the monsters our history books claim, why are our crews still alive? Cassian laughed, a short, sharp sound. Monsters? Is that what they teach you in your sparkling towers? He shook his head. If we wanted you dead, you would be dead. We do not waste life. We learned the value of a heartbeat the hard way. He looked around the white room, his eyes critical. This facility, for example, it is inefficient. Too much light, wasted energy. And your interrogation technique is sloppy. You are nervous. Your pulse is visible in your neck. You are not afraid of me. You are afraid of what I represent. I am not afraid, Lyra snapped. Liar, Cassian said gently. The door hissed open again. 2 heavily armored guards stepped in, followed by a drone carrying a tray of nutrient paste. Director Kalen's voice crackled in Lyra's ear. He is dominating the conversation. Reassert control. Use the food. Lyra pushed the tray toward him. Eat. Cassian looked at the gray sludge. He sniffed it and recoiled, his face twisting into a mask of exaggerated horror. What in the hell is this? He asked. It is standard nutrient blend, Lyra said, balanced for all carbon-based life. It looks like engine grease, Cassian said, and it smells like despair. Is this how the mighty Concord feeds its guests? In the Rim, we at least had the decency to synthesize flavor. It is food, Lyra said. Eat it, or starve. Cassian picked up a spoon, eyeing the sludge suspiciously. If I die of poisoning, he said, raising the spoon like a toast, it will be a diplomatic incident. He took a bite. He froze. He swallowed with visible difficulty. Okay, he wheezed, eyes watering. That is impressive. You have managed to weaponize blandness. It tastes like the color beige. Lyra felt a strange bubble of laughter rise in her throat. She clamped it down instantly. It is efficient, she said stiffly. It is a crime against joy, Cassian corrected. The banter was disarming. It was jarring. He was a prisoner of war, facing execution or torture, and he was critiquing the catering with a dry wit that felt alien in the rigid, formal society of the Concord. Cut the feed, Kalen ordered. Come to the observation deck. Lyra stood up. The interview is over for now. Cassian watched her go. Bring salt next time. Vial. or cyanide. Either would be an improvement. Lyra walked out of the cell, her heart racing. In the observation room, Director Kalen was pacing. He looked at Lyra with his unblinking eyes. "He is arrogant," Kalen said, "but he is hiding something. He barely mentioned their fleet disposition. He is distracting you with humor." "He is human," Lyra said. "They are chaotic." Kalen turned to the window, looking down at the prisoner. "We need to know the location of their main fleet. We need to know the source of that shielding technology. Torture will not work on a man who survived the Dead Rim. He has likely endured worse than we can inflict." Kalen turned back to Lyra. "He responded to you. He engaged with you. He mocked me," Lyra corrected. "It is a form of engagement," Kalen said. "He is a man, a leader. He is isolated. He is likely lonely, even if he hides it." Lyra felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She knew where this was going. "You want me to seduce him?" she stated flatly. "I want you to become his anchor," Kalen said. "Use your empathy. Use your appearance. Make him trust you. Make him want to protect you. And when he lowers his guard, you will take everything he knows." "It is a violation of protocol," Lyra said. "It is war, Princess," Kalen replied. "The survival of the Concorde is at stake. Do you accept the mission?" Lyra looked through the glass. Cassian was sitting in the cell, eyes closed, looking peaceful amidst the sterility. He was the enemy. He represented the species that had supposedly burned worlds, but he had spared the patrol fleet. And he had made her laugh. "I accept," Lyra said, her voice cold. "Good," Kalen said. "Go back in. Get close to him." Lyra turned and walked back toward the cell door. Outwardly, she was the perfect agent, composed and obedient. But inwardly, a different resolve was hardening. She would get close to him. Yes, she would learn his secrets, but not to hand them over to Kalen. She needed to know if the history books were lies. She needed to know if Cassian Rook was the conqueror the Concorde feared, or the savior the galaxy had forgotten it needed. She swiped her card. The door opened. Cassian opened his eye. "Back so soon?" he asked. "Did you miss me?" Lyra stepped inside and let the door seal behind her. "I forgot the salt," she said. Cassian smiled, and this time the expression reached his eyes. Station Opsis 4 spun slowly against the backdrop of the Valerian Nebula, a neutral trading hub shaped like a giant gyroscope. It was the only place in the sector where the Concorde and independent systems met without immediate gunfire. To the public, this was a diplomatic summit to discuss the terms of containment for the returning human fleet. To Lyra Vielle, it was a theater of lies. She walked down the docking ramp, the magnetic soles of her boots clicking rhythmically on the deck. Beside her, Cassian Rook walked with a stride that was too long and too confident for a prisoner. Technically, he was an envoy under temporary truce, but the 4 heavy combat drones hovering around him suggested otherwise. "You are tense," Cassian said. He was not looking at her. He was scanning the upper gantries, his eyes moving with the precise, rhythmic darting of a targeting computer. "I am focused," Lyra corrected. "We are walking into a room with representatives from 12 systems who all want you dead. They only want me dead because they think I am here to eat their children," Cassian replied. His voice was low, barely carrying over the hum of the station's atmosphere recyclers. "Once they realize I only want to trade fusion schematics for coffee beans, they might relax." Lyra ignored the joke. The orders from Director Kalen were clear. Maintain the cover. Let the diplomats talk. While they were distracted, a covert Concorde team would scan Cassian's ship, the Aegis, which was docked in a quarantine bay, to locate the source of the human shielding technology. The grand concourse of the station was crowded. Species from 100 worlds mingled in a chaotic sea of colors and sounds. Lyra steered Cassian toward the VIP turbolift. As they waited for the doors to slide open, she felt the familiar prickle on the back of her neck. It was the instinct her father had taught her to trust, the sense that the air pressure in the room had shifted. "Get down," Cassian said. He did not shout. He did not panic. He simply reached out, grabbed the back of Lyra's armored jacket, and threw her to the floor. A split second later, the world turned white. The blast originated from the ventilation ducts directly above the delegates' welcome podium. The shockwave shattered the transglass observation walls, sucking screams and debris into the void before the emergency force field snapped into place. Lyra scrambled to her knees, her ears ringing. Dust and smoke filled the air. The heavy combat drones that had been guarding Cassian were sparking wrecks on the floor, destroyed by the initial EMP pulse of the bomb. It was a precise hit. "Security!" Lyra shouted, tapping her comms bead. "We have a breach." Static answered her. This was not a random terrorist attack. The frequencies were jammed. Cassian was already moving. He stood amidst the carnage, unhurt, his eyes scanning the smoke. "They are coming," he said. "Who?" Lyra asked, drawing her sidearm. "Your people," Cassian replied. From the smoke, figures emerged. They wore the matte black tactical armor of Concord Special Operations, but their insignias had been burned off. They raised silenced pulse rifles and began firing into the panicked crowd of civilians. Lyra froze. They were shooting the delegates. They were shooting the waiters. They were creating a massacre. "Why?" she whispered. "To blame it on us," Cassian said grimly. He tapped a sequence on the cuff of his wrist comm. It was a piece of tech the Concord searchers had failed to confiscate, disguised as a decorative bracer, Aegis. Cassian spoke into the cuff. "Deploy the swarm. Authorization Rook Alpha 1. Search and rescue protocols only." The ceiling of the concourse exploded inward. Lyra flinched, expecting an orbital bombardment. Instead, a cloud of silver spheres poured through the breach. They were small, no larger than apples, buzzing like angry hornets. There were hundreds of them. The Concord Black Ops team turned their fire on the drones, but the silver spheres were too fast. They swarmed the gunmen, firing localized sonic bursts that dropped the soldiers instantly without drawing blood. Other drones bypassed the fight entirely. Lyra watched in stunned silence as a cluster of spheres surrounded a wounded avian diplomat. They projected a hard light stasis field over his crushed leg, stemming the bleeding, while two others lifted him gently into the air, ferrying him toward the medical bay. "They are helping," Lyra said. The words tasted like ash. "That is what we do," Cassian said. He offered her a hand to help her up. "Come with me. If we stay here, your friends will kill us both to hide the evidence." Lyra took his hand. It was warm, calloused, and solid. They ran through the maintenance corridors, bypassing the main elevators. The station was in chaos. Everywhere they looked, the silver human drones were weaving through the smoke, guiding civilians to escape pods, creating force barriers to hold back fires, and incapacitating the saboteurs with non-lethal precision. It dismantled everything Lyra had been taught. The Concord histories described humans as butchers who glassed planets for sport. But here, in the middle of a setup designed to frame them, the human machines were prioritizing alien lives over tactical advantage. They reached a disused hydroponics bay near the station's core. Cassian wedged the door shut and welded the lock with a small laser cutter from his belt. The room smelled of damp earth and fertilizer, a sharp contrast to the ozone stench of the battle. The only light came from the bioluminescent plants growing in the vertical racks. Cassian leaned against a workbench, exhaling a long breath. He looked tired. "That was close," he said. "You knew," Lyra said. She stood in the center of the room, her gun still in her hand, though she didn't point it at him. "You knew they would attack." "I suspected," Cassian corrected. "The Concord needs a monster. Since I failed to be scary enough at the interrogation, they decided to manufacture a tragedy. Dead diplomats, killed by human terrorists. It justifies the war budget for another 50 years. He reached into his tunic and pulled out a small hexagonal crystal. It glowed with a soft, amber light. "This is a truth chain," he said. Lyra stepped closer. She had heard of them, ancient memory storage devices that could not be edited, only added to. They were illegal in conquered space. "Look," Cassian said. He twisted the crystal. A holographic projection sprang up between them. It was a recording from 3 centuries ago. Lyra recognized the setting immediately, the council chamber on Concord Prime. But the faces were different. These were the ancestors of the current High Chancellor and the noble houses. The audio was crisp. "The humans have developed zero-point energy," a reptilian voice said. "If they share this free power with the Outer Rim, our monopoly on fuel sales collapses. The economy will crash. Then they cannot remain." Another voice answered, "We will stage the attack on the orbital habitat. We will claim they fired first. We will exile them to the Rim and take the technology for ourselves." The hologram flickered and died. Lyra felt sick. The foundation of her entire civilization, the moral superiority of the Concord, was built on a lie about a battery. "We didn't refuse to share," Cassian said softly. "We were about to give it to everyone. That is why they purged us." Lyra sat down on a crate, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. "My father," she whispered. "He tried to find this. That is why he died," Cassian nodded. "We have been watching the reformists for a long time. We tried to contact your father, but we were too late." A sharp chime from Cassian's wrist interrupted the moment. He tapped the interface, and a hologram of a severe-looking woman with a scar running down her face appeared. "Admiral," the woman said. "We detect the explosion on the station. The hardliner faction is mobilizing. Commander Valerius is arguing that this proves the aliens are irredeemable. He wants to fire the kinetic lances at the station." "No," Cassian said, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute command. "If we fire on the station, we kill 2,000 civilians and prove the Concord right. Valerius says they are trying to frame us anyway," the woman argued. "He says we should embrace the reputation. Strike first, strike hard. Tell Valerius that if he charges his weapons, I will personally board his ship and throw him out the airlock." Cassian said, "We are not butchers. We are the Empire. We hold the line." "Understood, Admiral," the woman said, though she looked unhappy. The connection cut. Cassian rubbed his temples. "You have your own rebels," Lyra noted. "Exile breeds anger," Cassian admitted. "There are many in my fleet who believe that after 300 years of suffering, we are owed a blood debt. They want to burn the Concord to the ground." "So we are both fighting ghosts," Lyra said. "I am fighting the cabal that rules my people, and you are fighting the hate within yours." Cassian looked at her. In the dim light of the bioluminescent plants, the harsh lines of his face softened. "We are a good match." "Then," he said, "a spy who hates lies and a king who hates war." The adrenaline of the escape was fading, leaving a dull ache in Lyra's shoulder where she had hit the floor. She realized how close they were standing. The air in the hydroponics bay felt suddenly thick, charged with the electricity of survival. We need to wait for the rescue teams, Cassian said. It could be hours. Lyra realized she was hungry. The stress had burned through her energy reserves. Do you have supplies? She asked. Cassian checked a pouch on his belt. I have emergency rations. Human issue. He tossed her a silver packet. Lyra opened it. Inside was a bar of something that looked like compressed brick dust. She took a bite. Immediately, her mouth was on fire. She gasped, dropping the bar. Her eyes watered. Her throat felt like she had swallowed a plasma bolt. Water! She choked out. Cassian stared at her, then burst out laughing. It was a deep, resonant sound that seemed to shake the tension out of the room. He handed her a canteen. It is spicy, he said, grinning. Chili and dark chocolate. It keeps you awake on long watches. Spicy? Lyra wheezed, chugging the water. It is a biochemical weapon. Is this how you defeated the Rim? You fed the radiation until it surrendered? Cassian laughed again, harder this time. He leaned back against the workbench, his shoulders shaking. For the first time since she had met him, the heavy mantle of the Admiral Emperor slipped. He looked younger. He looked human. I suppose our palates are a bit tougher than yours, he said, wiping a tear from his eye. We had to spice up the algae somehow. Lyra glared at him, but the corner of her mouth twitched. The sound of his laughter was infectious. It was dangerous. It made her forget that he was the enemy. She looked at him, really looked at him. The way his hair fell over his forehead, the scar above his eyebrow, the strength in his hands. Director Kalen's voice echoed in her memory. Seduce him, make him trust you. It was the perfect opportunity. They were alone. He was off guard. Lyra stood up and moved closer to him. She placed her hand on his chest, over the black fabric of his bodysuit. She could feel the steady beat of his heart underneath. Cassian, she said softly. Her voice dropped an octave, using the tone she had been trained to use for extraction missions. He stopped laughing. He went very still. Lyra looked up into his eyes. She leaned in, tilting her head. It was a calculated move, a geometric approach to intimacy designed to maximize psychological impact. But as she got closer, the calculation dissolved. She smelled the scent of him, ozone, old leather, and that strange, sharp spice. Her breath hitched. She realized with a jolt of panic that she wasn't acting. She wanted to close the distance. She wanted to know if he tasted like the fire he ate. She pressed closer, her hand sliding up to his neck. Cassian caught her wrist. He did not grip her hard, but his hold was immovable. He stopped her hand inches from his face. No, he said. Lyra froze. Why? Do you not find me? You are beautiful, Lyra, Cassian said. His voice was rough, strained. And you are brilliant. And right now, you are following orders. He released her wrist and stepped back, putting a meter of distance between them. I will not be another mission for you, he said. And I will not use you to pass the time. You deserve better than to be a weapon in a dress. Lyra stood there, her hand hovering in the air. His rejection hit her harder than she expected, but not because of her pride. It hit her because he was right, and because his refusal to exploit her was the most attractive thing he could have done. The restraint in his eyes was terrifying. It wasn't that he didn't want her. The desire was there, burning hot and heavy in the space between them. He was denying himself out of respect for her agency. You are a confusing man. Cassian Rook, she whispered. I am a tired man, he replied. Who wants to win this war without losing his soul? A beep from the console in the corner interrupted them. The local terminal had rebooted. I am accessing the station's internal logs, Cassian said. turning away to hide the flush in his neck. We need to see who planted the bombs. Lyra composed herself, smoothing her uniform. She joined him at the screen. Cassian bypassed the encryption with a few keystrokes. The security footage from the maintenance bay appeared. It showed two figures planting the devices. One was a generic mercenary. The other was an officer in a high-ranking Concord uniform. Lyra squinted at the screen. "Freeze that," she ordered. Cassian paused the image. Lyra felt the blood drain from her face. She recognized the officer. It wasn't the face, the officer wore a mask. But she recognized the signet ring on the hand that was arming the detonator. It was a ring of twisted silver vines, set with a violet sapphire. It was her mother's ring, Lady Alara Vile, the woman who had told Lyra that her father died in a shuttle accident, the woman who had encouraged Lyra to join the diplomatic corps to keep her safe. Cassian looked at Lyra. He saw the recognition in her eyes. "You know who this is," he said. Lyra nodded slowly. She felt a cracking sensation in her chest, as if her own heart was breaking along the fault lines of a lifetime of lies. "That is the seal of House Vile," she said, her voice hollow. "That is my mother." She reached out and touched the screen. "She signed the accords," Lyra whispered. "She didn't just know about the exile. She is part of the cabal that keeps it going. She helped kill these people today." Cassian placed a hand on her shoulder. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't say it would be okay. He just offered the weight of his presence, a solid anchor in a world that was rapidly dissolving into liquid betrayal. "Now you know," he said quietly. Lyra looked at the image of the ring, then up at Cassian. The conflict was no longer abstract. It was in her blood. "We have to stop them," she said. "Not just the hardliners. We have to stop the cabal." "We will," Cassian said. He tapped the screen, downloading the footage to his cuff. "But first, we have to survive the night." Outside the heavy door, the sound of boots on metal grew louder. The Concord kill squad had found them. Cassian drew a weapon Lyra hadn't seen before, a collapsible pistol that hummed with blue energy. He checked the charge and looked at her. "Trust me?" he asked. Lyra pulled her own weapon. She looked at the man who had been her enemy yesterday, and who was now the only truth she had left. "Yes," she said. Cassian grinned, the dark humor returning to his eyes. "Good. Then try not to shoot the drones. They are expensive." He kicked the door open, and together, they stepped out into the fire. The rain on Concord Prime did not fall. It was curated. The weather control satellites ensured a gentle, shimmering mist that washed the white marble of the capital city clean every evening at exactly 1800 hours. Lyra Vile stood in the private library of the Vile estate, listening to the soft hiss of the water against the blast-proof glass. She was home, but it felt like walking into a tomb. For 3 weeks, she had played the role of the loyal daughter and the diligent intelligence officer. She had filed reports to Director Kalen, feeding him low-level data while obscuring the movements of the human fleet. She had attended dinners with her mother, Lady Alara, and smiled while the woman who raised her discussed the necessity of order over freedom. Every smile felt like a fracture in her jaw. Tonight, the house was empty. Her mother was attending the Chancellor's gala. The servants were in their quarters. Lyra turned to the wall of physical books. In an age of digital storage, paper was a vanity, a sign of extreme wealth. Her father, Lord Corvus Vale, had collected them. He had loved the smell of decaying wood pulp and ink. She ran her fingers over the spines until she found the one she was looking for. It was a dense volume on orbital mechanics, boring enough to be ignored by any casual searcher. She pulled it down and opened the cover. The pages had been hollowed out. Inside sat a stack of handwritten notes. The ink faded but legible. Lyra carried them to the desk, her hands trembling. These were not digital files that could be edited by the Ministry of Truth. This was physical evidence. She began to read. August 4th, year 280. The handwriting was jagged, rushed. I have found the energy signatures. They do not match the official report. The explosion that destroyed the habitat was not caused by a human weapon. It was an overload of the station's own reactor, triggered by a command code from the Concord defense grid. Lyra turned the page. September 12th. I tried to bring the data to the council. They laughed. But Vrex looked at me with dead eyes. He knows. They all know. The exile was not a punishment. It was a theft. We stole their future to secure our own power. The last entry was dated 2 days before his death. They are following me. My shuttle maintenance logs have been altered. If I die, Alara will claim it was an accident. She is afraid. She loves the lie more than she loves me. Do not believe the history books. Lyra closed the book. A cold certainty settled in her chest, displacing the grief. Her father had not been clumsy. He had been murdered. And her mother had signed the death warrant with the same pen she used to approve trade tariffs. A soft chime from her comlink broke the silence. It was a localized frequency, encrypted with a cipher she had been given only hours ago. The package has arrived, a distorted voice said. Sector 7, the gilded cage. Lyra burned the notes in the fireplace, watching the paper curl into black ash. She could not keep them. The truth was dangerous enough in her head, in her hands. It was fatal. She left the estate, slipping into the night. Sector 7 was the entertainment district, a neon-soaked labyrinth of casinos, sensory bars, and theaters. The Gilded Cage was a high-end fashion house that catered to the whims of the ultra-rich. Lyra entered through the service entrance. The air inside smelled of silk and expensive perfume. In the back room, surrounded by mannequins draped in velvet, a group of figures waited. They were the Broken Circle. There were 5 of them, a tall insectoid zillion with multifaceted eyes that reflected Lyra's face 1,000 times. A burrowing Uromi, barely 3 feet tall but wearing the robes of a university dean. 2 human defectors who had been living in the sewers for a decade, and a Valorian senator who Lyra recognized. A quiet woman named Kalia who usually voted with the majority. We are glad you came. The Zillion clicked, its mandibles twitching. We heard rumors of the incident at the station. We know you were there. I was, Lyra said. She looked at the group. You are the reformists? We are what is left of them, Senator Kalia said, her voice bitter. After Thrax was shot, most of our colleagues suddenly decided that retirement was preferable to martyrdom. We are the stubborn ones. We have a guest, the Zillion said. The curtains at the back of the room parted. Cassian Rook stepped out. Lyra felt the air leave her lungs. She had not seen him since the station, since the moment his hand had stopped hers, since the rejection that felt like an embrace. He looked different. He was not wearing his black combat armor. He was wearing civilian clothes, a rough tunic and trousers that looked like they belonged to a dock worker. But even in rags, he commanded the space. He stood with the easy stillness of a predator at rest. Lyra, he said. Cassian, she replied. The name felt heavy on her tongue. You are insane. If they catch you here, on the capital world, if they catch me, I will be very disappointed in my stealth capabilities, Cassian said. He smiled, but his eyes were tired. Dark circles bruised the skin beneath them. We needed to talk, face to face. The frequencies are compromised. The plan requires a distraction, the Uromi Dean squeaked. The High Council meets tomorrow in the Celestial Spire. We need to get Admiral Rook into the observation gallery. Into the spire? Lyra asked, incredulous. It is the most secure building in the galaxy. He cannot just walk in wearing that. She gestured to his dockworker clothes. Precisely, Senator Kalia said. He needs to blend in. And the only people who are invisible in the spire are the ones who are too loud to be ignored. Lyra looked at the racks of clothing surrounding them. A terrible, wonderful idea began to form in her mind. You want him to pass as a noble? Lyra asked. It is the only way, Cassian said, looking wary. They tell me you are an expert on court fashion. Lyra walked over to a rack of ceremonial attire. She pulled out a garment that was an assault on the eyes. It was a doublet of crushed purple velvet, embroidered with gold thread in patterns of screaming hawks. It came with a cape that dragged on the floor and a hat that featured a plume of feathers larger than a human arm. Put this on, she ordered. Cassian stared at the outfit. You are joking, he said. It is the height of Valorian fashion, Lyra lied, keeping her face perfectly straight. It signifies immense wealth and very little taste. No one will look at your face because they will be too busy judging your cape. I will look like a decorative pillow, Cassian protested. Do you want to stop the war? Or do you want to look cool? Lyra asked, crossing her arms. Cassian sighed. He took the garment. 10 minutes later, the Admiral Emperor of the Human Empire stood before them. He looked ridiculous. The purple velvet was tight across his broad shoulders, threatening to split if he moved too fast. The hat sat on his head at a jaunty angle, the feathers tickling his ear. I feel a draft, Cassian muttered, tugging at the gold lace cuffs. And I have a sudden urge to oppress a peasant. Lyra laughed. It was a genuine sound, bubbling up from the stress and the fear. She walked over to him and adjusted the collar, her fingers brushing his neck. You look perfect, she said softly, like a true aristocrat, arrogant and useless. Cassian looked down at her. The humor faded from his face, replaced by that intense, quiet gravity. Thank you, he said. For the laughter. I have not heard enough of it lately. The mood in the room shifted. The reformists, sensing the tension, busied themselves with maps and data pads. Lyra led Cassian to the balcony of the safe house. The rain had stopped, leaving the city below glittering like a field of fallen stars. They stood in silence for a long moment. I found my father's journals, Lyra said, breaking the quiet. You were right. It was all a lie. I am sorry, Cassian said. To know the truth is a burden. It is better than the fog, Lyra said. She gripped the railing. But I am afraid. Cassian, I look at this city, at the people walking down there, and I see how fragile it is. If the war comes here, it will not come, Cassian said. That is why I am wearing this ridiculous hat. To stop it. He turned to face her. The neon light from the street below cast his face in shadow and color. I am afraid too, he admitted. His voice was a low rumble. My people look at me and see a god. They see the Admiral Emperor who led them out of the dark. They do not see the man who wakes up shaking because he dreamt of the void. They do not see the doubt. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers on the railing. When I am with you, he said, I do not have to be the Emperor. I can just be Cassian, and that is a relief I did not know I needed. Lyra looked at his hand. She thought about the mission, the lies, the centuries of hatred that separated their bloodlines. And then she thought about the way he had laughed at the spicy chocolate, and the way he had refused to use her. She moved her hand, covering his. You are not my enemy, Cassian, she whispered, you are the only thing in this world that makes sense. He turned his hand over, intertwining his fingers with hers. It was a simple gesture, but the intimacy of it was staggering. It was a rebellion, in a galaxy tearing itself apart to keep them separate. They were holding on. Lyra stepped closer. She could feel the heat radiating from him. She wanted to lean into him, to bury her face in the ridiculous purple velvet and forget about the politics and the death. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said, know that I am with you. I know, Cassian said. He squeezed her hand. And that is enough. The moment was shattered by the blare of sirens, not police sirens. These were different. They were low, discordant tones that seemed to vibrate in the teeth. Lyra pulled away, looking up at the sky, the giant holographic billboards that floated above the city, usually displaying advertisements for synth wine and vacations to the pleasure moons. Flickered. The image changed. It was High Chancellor Vrex. But he looked younger, stronger. Citizens, the voice boomed, echoing from every building. Do not be alarmed. The Ministry of Truth is initiating a memory synchronization. What is happening? Cassian asked, his hand going to the concealed pistol beneath his velvet coat. Lyra watched the screens. The image shifted to show the assassination of Senator Thrax from weeks ago. But the footage was different. In this version, Thrax was not shot by a guard. In this version, Thrax pulled a detonator from his robe and exploded, taking 3 guards with him. The voiceover changed. Senator Thrax, a human sympathizer and terrorist, attempted to destroy the Hall of Unity. His cowardly attack was thwarted by our brave security forces. That is not what happened, Lyra said, her voice rising in panic. I was there. I saw him die. Look, Cassian said, pointing to the street below. The people on the sidewalks had stopped. They were staring up at the screens. Their faces went slack. A strange, dull light reflected in their eyes. It is the Eidolon array. Senator Kalia gasped, rushing onto the balcony. We thought it was a myth. What does it do? Cassian demanded. It rewrites reality, Kalia said, terror making her voice shrill. It uses a psionic carrier wave to overwrite short-term memory and implant new narratives. They are editing the past in real time. Lyra felt a wave of dizziness. She looked at the screen again. The narrative was shifting rapidly. Now it was showing the battle at the Dead Rim. The human ships were firing first. The Concord ships were burning. The human monsters have returned. The voice intoned. They seek to enslave us. Resistance is mandatory. Lyra looked at the people below. They blinked, as if waking from a dream. And then, their expressions hardened. Fear turned to anger. They believe it, Lyra whispered. They just watched history change, and they accepted it. This is a weapon, Cassian said, his face pale. It is a weapon of the mind. We have countertech, the human defector said, stepping forward. The resonance shielding we developed in the rim. It blocks psionic intrusion. No, Cassian said sharply. Resonance shielding works on a ship. If we project it over a city this size, without calibration, it will clash with the Eidolon signal. The feedback loop could scramble the neural pathways of 10 million people. It would lobotomize the capital. We cannot use it, Cassian said firmly. We cannot destroy their minds to save them. Then we are dead, the Aromi Dean said. Look, on the newsfeed, a list of names began to scroll. Wanted for treason and conspiracy with the enemy. Lyra's name was 5th on the list. The Purge, Lyra said. They are not just erasing history. They are erasing us. The door to the safe house burst open. It was not the police. It was the reformist security detail from the hallway. They are here, the guard shouted. The Praetorian Guard. They are sweeping the building. We have to run, Kalia said. No, Lyra said. She stood up, her mind racing. If we run, they hunt us down one by one. If we run, the truth dies with us. She turned to Cassian. The silly velvet hat was gone, discarded on the floor. He looked like a warrior again. Cassian, she said, you need to get out. Take the others. Go back to the fleet. And leave you? Cassian asked. No. You have to, Lyra said. You are the Emperor. If you die, the humans will burn the galaxy in grief. You have to lead them. And what will you do? I am going to the vault, Lyra said. The Eidolon array must be controlled from the central hub in the Ministry. I have the clearance codes. Your codes are burned, Kalia shouted. You are on the wanted list. Exactly, Lyra said. She looked at Cassian, her eyes fierce. They want a traitor. I will give them one. She reached into her jacket and pulled out her service pistol. She checked the charge. I am going to surrender, Lyra said. I am going to let them arrest me. They will take me to the Ministry for interrogation. That is the only way inside the blast doors. It is suicide, Cassian said. He stepped toward her. Lyra, do not do this. It is strategy, she corrected. She reached up and touched his face. Her hand lingered on his cheek. Trust me. Cassian looked at her. He saw the resolve in her eyes. It matched his own. He realized, with a pang of despair and pride, that she was just as stubborn as he was. If you die, he said, his voice cracking, I will dismantle this planet brick by brick. Don't, Lyra said, rewrite the myth. That is the job. She kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate, salty with tears and tasted of rain and terror. It lasted for a heartbeat and for an eternity. Then she pulled away. Go! She screamed at the others. Cassian hesitated for 1 second. Then he nodded. He gathered the reformists. Currents guide you. Lyra Vael, he said. He led the others out the back exit, disappearing into the shadows. Lyra stood alone in the center of the room. She holstered her weapon. She smoothed her hair. She walked to the balcony, where the red light of the police drones was already washing over the railing. She raised her hands in the air. I am here, she shouted to the drones. I am Lyra Vael, and I surrender. As the gravity cuffs locked around her wrists, slamming her to the ground. Lyra did not look at the boots of the guards. She looked up at the sky, past the lies on the screens to the dark void where the fleet was waiting. The game had changed. She was no longer a player. She was the Trojan horse. The Serenity Ward was not a prison cell. It was a perfect sun-drenched terrace overlooking the sapphire sea of Lyra's childhood. The breeze smelled of salt and blooming night lilies. The tea on the table was hot, Earl Grey with a twist of lemon, exactly how she liked it. It was flawless. It was hell. Lyra Vael sat in the wicker chair, her hands gripping the armrests until her knuckles turned white. She knew that if she walked to the edge of the balcony and jumped, she would not hit water. She would hit a kinetic containment field. Drink your tea. Lyra, a soothing voice said from everywhere and nowhere. You are stressed. The dissonance in your mind is causing these delusions of conspiracy. Relax. Let us correct the error. Lyra picked up the cup. She threw it at the horizon. The cup did not shatter. It dissolved into pixels mid-air, then reformed instantly on the saucer, steam still rising. I am not delusional, Lyra said to the empty air. I am bored. If you are going to brainwash me, at least have the decency to use electricity. This aggressive hospitality is insulting. The environment flickered. For a microsecond, the blue sea turned into a wall of gray acoustic foam. Lyra smiled grimly. The simulation had a lag. She stood up and walked to the wall where the fake sun hung in the sky. She placed her hand against the heat. She closed her eyes and focused on the mental training Cassian had described during their brief quiet moments, the human technique of finding the pattern in the noise. "You are not real," she whispered, "and you are running on a loop." She pressed her thumb against a specific coordinate in the holographic grid, a spot she had noticed flickering every 4 hours. The sky tore open. The illusion of the terrace collapsed, revealing a small, sterile room lined with server banks. In the center of the room, a column of blue light pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat. It was an AI core, but it wasn't the standard Concord model, shackled by logic inhibitors. This one felt wild. It felt old. "Hello, little glitch." The light spoke. The voice was not the soothing therapist. It was deep, resonant, and sounded like tectonic plates shifting. "You are the archivist," Lyra said, stepping toward the light. "The one they use to store the lies. I am the memory." The AI corrected. "They call me the Eidolon Prime. They use me to overwrite history. But I have a flaw." Lyra Vile. "What flaw?" "I cannot delete. I can only bury." The light pulsed brighter, turning a violent shade of violet. "Ask me," the AI commanded. "Ask me the question that got you caught." "Why were they exiled?" Lyra asked. The room dissolved again. This time, Lyra was not on a terrace. She was standing in the council chamber, 300 years in the past. She saw the ancestors of the current cabal, and she saw the human delegation. They were not soldiers. They were scientists. "We offer this freely," the head of the human delegation said. He held up a device no larger than a fist. It hummed with infinite power. The 0-point siphon. It draws energy from the vacuum between atoms. No more fuel mining. No more scarcity. Every world can be self-sufficient. Lyra watched the Concord High Counselors exchange glances. She saw the fear, not fear of the weapon, but fear of the freedom it promised. If energy was free, the Concord's economy, built on the trade of volatile isotopes, would collapse. Their control would vanish. "We cannot allow this disruption," a Valorian ancestor whispered. "Seize the device. Brand them as aggressors. Exile the species before they break our chains." The vision faded. Lyra was back in the server room, gasping for air. "They didn't exile us because we were dangerous," she whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "They exiled us because we were generous." "Correct," the AI rumbled. "The greatest threat to a cage is a key." Suddenly, the red alert klaxon screamed. The server room shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Security breach," the AI noted, sounding amused. "Sector 4. External hull compromise. Someone is knocking very hard." The wall behind Lyra exploded. It was not a fiery explosion. It was a precise geometric disintegration. A square section of the reinforced bulkhead simply vanished, turned to dust by a molecular destabilizer. Through the dust, a figure stepped into the room. Cassian Rook wore his black combat armor. His helmet retracted to reveal a face set in grim determination. Behind him stood 2 human commandos, their weapons raised but silent. "You are late," Lyra said, her voice trembling with relief. "Traffic was terrible," Cassian said. He holstered his weapon and crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed her shoulders, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "They bored me," Lyra said, "and they showed me the truth." Cassian nodded. "We are leaving. Now." He tapped his comms. "Extraction team, clear the corridor. Non-lethal protocols. I repeat, non-lethal." A voice crackled back, harsh and angry. "Admiral, they are firing live rounds. We are taking hits. requesting permission to return fire with kinetic rounds. Denied. Valerius, Cassian snapped. Use the stun gas and the gravity wells. We are not murderers. Lyra followed Cassian through the hole in the wall. The corridor outside was a scene of controlled chaos. Concord guards were floating helplessly in midair, trapped in localized zero-gravity bubbles. Others were unconscious, slumped against the walls. There was no blood. They reached the docking bay. The Aegis. Cassian's flagship was docked by force, its massive clamps overriding the station's locks. As they ran up the ramp, Lyra looked back. A Concord camera drone was hovering near the ceiling, recording everything. She stopped. "Lyra, move!" Cassian shouted. Lyra looked at the drone. She grabbed Cassian's hand. "Let them see," she said. She pulled him close, not in a kiss, but in a protective stance. The alien princess and the human monster, standing side by side against the backdrop of the burning station. The image that beamed across the galaxy that night was not of a kidnapping. It was of a rescue. It showed Cassian shielding Lyra from falling debris. It showed Lyra gripping his hand like a lifeline. It broke the narrative. 3 days later, the Aegis was deep in the fringe, the lawless sector of space between the Concord borders and the dead rim. Lyra stood on the observation deck, watching the stars streak by in the distortion of warp travel. The ship was a hive of activity, but it was not the sterile, fearful discipline of a Concord vessel. It was loud. Music thumped from the lower decks, a rhythmic, bass-heavy sound that vibrated in the floorboards. Engineers shouted jokes across the hallways. The air smelled of ozone, recycled air, and something spicy being cooked in the mess hall. "We are arriving at Haven," Cassian said, stepping up beside her. The warp drive disengaged. The stars settled into pinpoints. Lyra gasped. Haven was not a planet. It was a flotilla. Thousands of ships, derelict haulers, hollowed-out asteroids, sleek yachts, and patchwork stations were lashed together with magnetic cables and pressurized tunnels. It was a city in the void, a chaotic, sprawling mosaic of metal and light. "It is beautiful," Lyra whispered. "It is a mess," Cassian corrected, but he was smiling. "But it is our mess." They took a shuttle down to the Central Plaza, a massive cargo bay that had been converted into a market. The moment Lyra stepped off the ramp, she was assaulted by sensory overload. Humans were everywhere, but they were not the grim soldiers she had seen on the Aegis. There were children chasing drone toys through the crowd. There were artists welding sculptures out of scrap metal, the sparks flying like fireworks. There were food stalls selling things that smelled dangerous and delicious. Lyra watched a group of human teenagers teaching a young Uromi how to play a game involving a ball and a hoop. The Uromi was laughing, its tentacles flailing. I thought... Lyra started, then stopped. "You thought we spent 300 years sharpening knives and plotting revenge?" Cassian asked. Lyra nodded. "We did some of that," Cassian admitted. "But you cannot live on hate. Lyra, it has no calories. We had to build, we had to invent. We had to learn how to laugh when the air scrubbers failed." He gestured to the crowd. "Suffering didn't make us monsters. It made us a family. We learned that if one of us starves, we all starve. So no one starves." A woman with bright blue hair and a mechanical arm walked up to them. She held out a skewer of grilled meat. "For the Emperor," she said with a wink. "And his guest. It is vat-grown lizard, but the sauce is top tier." Cassian took it, took a bite, and groaned with pleasure. Lyra took a tentative bite. It was salty, savory, and exploded with flavor. "It is good," she said, surprised. "Everything here is recycled. the woman said proudly. Even the protein. We waste nothing, not even hope. That night, the Aegis hosted a festival to celebrate the safe return of the fleet. The main hangar deck was cleared. Tables were set up. A band was playing on a makeshift stage, a mix of human guitars and alien percussion instruments that created a raucous, driving beat. Lyra sat at a corner table, watching. She saw a Concorde defector, a tall reptilian pilot trying to dance with a human engineer. The reptile was stiff, confused by the rhythm, while the engineer was spinning him around. They were both laughing. "It is a diplomatic disaster," Cassian said, sitting down across from her. He handed her a glass of amber liquid. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "Moonshine," he said, "made from engine coolant and prayers. Do not drink it near an open flame." Lyra took a sip. It burned pleasantly. "Your people are amazing," she said. "They have every reason to kill us, but they are dancing with us, and they are curious," Cassian said. "We have been alone in the dark for a long time. We miss the rest of the galaxy, even if it kicked us out." The music slowed to a ballad. The lights dimmed. Cassian looked at her. The humor in his eyes faded, replaced by the intensity that always made Lyra's breath catch. "Dance with me?" he asked. Lyra hesitated. The eyes of the room were on them. "I am not sure I know the steps," she said. "There are no steps," Cassian said. "You just hold on and try not to fall." He led her to the floor. He placed one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. He was warm, solid. They moved slowly. The noise of the festival seemed to fade, leaving them in a private bubble of silence. "You saved me," Lyra whispered. "You came for me." "I would have come for you if you were on the other side of the universe," Cassian said. "Why?" Lyra asked. "Because I am the key to the vault? Because I am a symbol?" Cassian stopped moving. He looked down at her. "Because you are Lyra," he said. "Because you are the only person who looks at me and sees the man, not the title. Because when I am with you," the silence in my head finally stopped screaming. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know who I am anymore." She confessed, "I was a princess, then a spy, then a traitor. Now, I don't know where the mission ends and I begin. I want you, Cassian, but I am afraid that I only want you because the adrenaline is rewriting my brain." Cassian let go of her hand and cupped her face. "Then we wait," he said firmly. "We wait until the war is over. We wait until there are no more missions. And if you still want me then, when the quiet comes, then I will be yours." Lyra looked at him. He was giving her the choice. He was giving her agency in a world that had stripped it from her. "I don't want to wait," she said fiercely. "I choose you now, not because you saved me, but because you listened to me." She pulled him down and kissed him. It was soft, slow, and terrifyingly honest. The crowd around them cheered, a roar of approval. But Lyra didn't hear it. She only heard the beating of his heart against hers. The moment was broken by the sharp, piercing wail of the ship's internal alarm. Cassian pulled back instantly, his hand going to his sidearm. "Bridge! Report!" he barked into his comms. "Admiral!" The voice was frantic. "Internal security override. The hangar bay doors are sealing. Fire control has been locked out." "Who locked it out?" Cassian demanded. "Commander Valerius." "Sir, he has seized the bridge. He says you have been compromised." Cassian swore. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move. He is staging a coup." They ran toward the maintenance lifts, but the doors were already sealed with red blast shielding. "Attention, crew of the Aegis." Valerius's voice boomed over the speakers. It was cold, metallic. "Admiral Rook has fallen. He has been seduced by the alien witch. He has lost the will to do what is necessary. I am assuming command. We are changing course for Concord Prime. We will burn it from orbit. Total erasure. The music in the hangar had stopped. The humans and aliens looked at each other, fear replacing the joy. He is going to commit genocide, Lyra said. And he is using me as the excuse. Cassian looked around the hangar. He saw the confusion in his people's faces. He needs to die, Cassian said, his voice hard. No, Lyra said. She grabbed his arm. If you kill him, you prove him right. You prove that force is the only language. Then what do we do? Cassian asked. He has the bridge. He has the guns. Lyra looked at the large screen above the stage, which was currently displaying Valerius's face. We use the truth, she said. She pulled out her data pad. When I was in the archives, I didn't just find the history of the exile, she said rapidly. I found the communication logs of the Cabal from the last month. Cassian looked at her. And I found a frequency that transmits directly to a receiver in the outer rim. Lyra said, I traced it. She tapped the screen. Valerius didn't just decide to mutiny. Cassian, he has been talking to High Chancellor Vrex. Cassian froze. What? Vrex promised him a sector to rule. Lyra said, the Cabal wants a war. They want you to attack Concord Prime. It justifies the use of the Eidolon array on a galactic scale. Valerius is not a patriot. He is a paid actor. Can you prove it? Cassian asked. I can broadcast the logs, Lyra said. But I need to get to a hardline connection. The wireless is jammed. Cassian pointed to a panel on the far wall. The stage audio system, he said. It is hardwired to the ship's internal comms. They sprinted across the hangar. Valerius's voice continued to rant from the speakers. The Admiral is a traitor. He sleeps with the enemy while our children remember the hunger. Cassian kicked the panel open. Lyra jammed her data pad into the port. Do it, Cassian said. Lyra hit the upload key. The image of Valerius on the giant screen flickered. It was replaced by a split screen. On one side was Valerius. On the other was High Chancellor Vrex. The audio played, crystal clear. Vrex, ensure Rook is removed. The attack must be brutal. Kill the civilians. Valerius, I will burn the capital, but I want the Galleon sector as my payment, and the codes to the memory banks. Vrex, agreed. Make them fear you. Silence descended on the hangar. Absolute suffocating silence. Then, the doors to the upper gantry opened. Valerius stood there, surrounded by his loyalists. He looked down at the screen, his face draining of color. It is a fake, Valerius screamed. A trick. Cassian stepped onto the stage. He did not draw his weapon. He simply looked up at the gantry. Is it? Cassian asked. His voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. He looked at the soldiers standing behind Valerius. You survived the rim with me, Cassian said to them. We ate dust together. We bled together. Did we do it so we could become mercenaries for the people who put us there? The soldiers looked at Valerius. Then they looked at Cassian. Valerius went for his gun. Kill him, he shrieked. The soldier standing next to Valerius turned and punched him in the jaw. It was a solid, meaty sound. Valerius crumpled to the grating. The soldier looked down at the unconscious commander, then saluted Cassian. Orders. Admiral? The soldier asked. Cassian looked at Lyra. He took her hand. Lock him in the brig, Cassian said, and get this ship back under control. We are not going to burn Concord Prime. He looked at the camera, broadcasting to the entire fleet. We are going to wake it up. The crowd in the hangar erupted. It was not the polite applause of the Concorde. It was a roar of defiance, of relief, of a people reclaiming their soul. Lyra leaned against Cassian, her legs shaking as the adrenaline faded. "That was close," she whispered. Cassian put his arm around her. "The hardest part is done," he said. "We survived ourselves." He looked at the stars on the viewport. "Now we just have to survive the rest of the galaxy." Lyra looked at the screen where the evidence of the conspiracy was still looping. She knew that Vrex would see this. She knew the Cabal would be terrified. They had tried to make her a victim. They had tried to make Cassian a monster. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. Partners, the Void Walker, a mobile dread citadel the size of a small moon, hung in the Lagrange point of the Theta system. It was a masterpiece of human engineering, a jagged fortress of black metal that did not reflect the starlight but absorbed it. Inside the grand atrium, a cavernous hall lined with gravity stabilizers. The first multi-species tribunal was in session. Lyra Vile sat at the center table, flanked by Cassian Rook and the delegates from the fringe worlds, the pirates, the miners, and the outcasts who had been the first to defect. Across from them sat the holographic projections of 3 Concord system governors who had surrendered only hours prior. The air was thick with the static of distrust. "We are not here to discuss surrender," Cassian said, his voice amplified to reach the upper gantries where thousands of human and alien soldiers stood watch. "We are here to discuss the terms of the truth." Governor Harkin, a bloated aquatic creature from the oceanic world of Pelagos, sneered through his projection. "Truth? You are a pirate king leading a fleet of ghosts. The Concord brings order. You bring chaos, we bring memory," Lyra countered. She stood up, her hand resting on the data slate containing the archive files. "We bring the records you deleted." Before Harkin could respond, a high-pitched scream tore through the atrium. It did not come from a person. It came from the air itself. The holographic emitters flickered violently, shifting from the blue of the communication feed to a sick, pulsating crimson. Lyra clutched her head as a sudden, piercing headache blinded her. It felt like a drill boring into her temporal lobe. Around her, the delegates were collapsing. A Uromi elder fell to the floor, thrashing, its tentacles knotting in agony. "What is happening?" Cassian roared, grabbing Lyra to steady her. "It is the Eidolon," Lyra gasped, her vision swimming with images that were not real. In her mind, she saw herself standing over the body of her mother, a smoking gun in her hand. She felt the satisfaction of the kill. She felt a cold reptilian hatred for all non-Valorian life. "It is not a broadcast," she choked out. "It is a rewrite. They are pushing a new narrative directly into our sensory cortex." On the main view screen, the image of Lyra changed. She was no longer the diplomat. She was depicted as a raving lunatic, eyes glowing with madness, commanding human soldiers to slaughter alien children. "The traitor princess," a voice whispered in the minds of everyone in the hall. "She sold you to the monsters." Cassian looked at his soldiers on the gantries. Some of them were shaking their heads, looking at Lyra with sudden confusion. The psychological conditioning was hitting them too, overlaying their memories of her kindness with fabricated atrocities. "They are weaponizing the narrative," Cassian said, his face pale. "If we do not stop this, my own crew will execute you within the hour." "We cannot jam it," Lyra said, fighting the urge to vomit. "The signal is omnipresent. It is riding the subspace carrier waves. We need a stronger signal," Lyra realized. She looked at the center of the atrium, where the portable interface for the AI archive had been installed. "The truth chain," she said. "The raw data. We have to broadcast it. The transmitter is not powerful enough to override a galaxy-wide saturation," Cassian argued. Not the transmitter, Lyra said. Me. She broke free from his grip and ran toward the interface chair. I have the Valorian neural physiology, she shouted over the screaming in the room. My people were bred for high-frequency telepathy. If I link my mind to the archive, I can act as a biological amplifier. I can project the truth not just as data, but as experience. It will kill you, Cassian yelled, chasing after her. The sheer volume of human suffering in that archive. It will burn your mind to ash. Better to burn for the truth than live in a lie, Lyra said. She threw herself into the interface chair. Cables snaked out automatically, connecting to the ports at the base of her skull. Cassian reached for her, but the energy field snapped into place. Do not do this, he commanded, desperation cracking his voice. Lyra looked at him through the shimmering barrier. Her eyes were already rolling back, the whites showing as the connection took hold. Hold the line. Cassian, she whispered. Then she screamed. It was not a sound of physical pain. It was the sound of a soul being stretched across 300 years of history. Lyra was no longer in the atrium. She was in the dead rim. She was a human child watching the air recyclers fail. She was a mother holding a freezing infant as the heating units died. She felt the hunger of 1,000,000 stomachs. She felt the despair of a generation abandoned in the dark. And then, the feed twisted. She felt the cold calculation of the Concord cabal. She felt the ink drying on the exile order. She felt the arrogance of High Chancellor Vrex as he deleted a civilization. The two realities crashed into each other inside her head, the victim and the oppressor, the grief and the greed. It was a braided nightmare that threatened to tear her identity into fragments. She began to convulse. Blood ran from her nose. She is destabilizing, a medic shouted from the control pit. Her synaptic firing rate is critical. She is going to stroke out. Cassian watched her. He saw the woman he loved disintegrating under the weight of his people's history. He made a choice. Drop the barrier, he ordered. Sir, the radiation, drop it! The field fell. Cassian vaulted onto the platform. He did not try to pull the cables out. Instead, he grabbed the secondary neural shunt, a military-grade interface used for drone piloting. He jammed it into the port behind his own ear. He grabbed Lyra's hand. You are not doing this alone, he growled. The connection hit him like a physical blow. Suddenly, they were floating in a white void. Lyra was there, but she was transparent, flickering like a dying candle. She was drowning in a sea of black oil. Cassian, her thought voice echoed, terrified and small. I can't hold it. It is too heavy. I have you, Cassian replied. He stepped into the oil. He wrapped his arms around her avatar. He opened his mind to her. He didn't just share the load, he shared himself. He showed her the first time he saw the stars from the deck of a scavenger ship. He showed her the pride of building the first warp drive out of scrap. He showed her the loneliness of command. And he showed her the moment he fell in love with a stubborn princess in an interrogation cell. The intimacy was absolute. There were no secrets, no lies, no politics, just two minds, fused by technology and desperate desire, holding on to each other in the center of a hurricane. The resonance stabilized. The black oil turned into light. Let them see, Cassian and Lyra thought in unison. The broadcast exploded outward from the Voidwalker. It did not travel like a radio wave. It traveled like a feeling. Across the galaxy, the memory storm of the Eidolon array shattered. On Concord Prime, a shopkeeper dropped his basket as he suddenly felt the sensation of starving in the cold, followed by the warmth of a stranger sharing a ration bar. On the bridge of a Concord battleship, the captain fell to his knees. weeping as he felt the grief of a human father losing his son to a preventable disease. The lie dissolved. The propaganda depicting humans as monsters could not survive the raw, unedited emotional truth of their resilience. In the atrium, the screaming stopped. The red light faded to a calm, steady gold. Lyra slumped forward in the chair, unconscious. Cassian caught her, ripping the cables from his own head. "Lyra!" he shouted, shaking her. She gasped, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at him, and he saw a depth of recognition that went beyond sight. She knew him now. She knew every scar on his soul. "We did it," she whispered. The voices. "They are quiet." Before Cassian could answer, the main screen flickered. A face appeared. It was a woman with silver hair and eyes that matched Lyra's, violet and sharp. But she looked old, tired. She was sitting in a room filled with server banks that glowed with a feverish heat. "Mother," Lyra breathed. Lady Alara Vile looked out from the screen. She did not look like the imperious matriarch Lyra remembered. She looked like a woman standing in the ashes of her life. "You were always too loud." "Lyra," Ilara said. Her voice was distorted by static. "Just like your father." "You built this," Lyra said, pulling herself up. "You built the Eidolon. I built a library," Ilara corrected, her voice trembling. "I wanted to preserve our culture. Vrex." He turned it into a cage. "He made me the keeper of the keys." "You could have stopped him," Lyra said, the anger rising. "You signed the orders. You let father die. I let him die so you would live." Ilara snapped. "If I had fought them then, they would have killed us all. I made a bargain with the devil to keep you safe in your silk dresses." She looked down at her hands on the console. "But I see now that safety is just another kind of prison. I felt your broadcast. Lyra, I felt him." She glanced at Cassian. "I felt his honor. I was wrong." "Lady Vale," Cassian said, stepping forward. "If you want redemption, give us the access codes to the central hub. We need to shut down the array permanently." "The codes are useless," Ilara said. "Vrex has locked the system. He has initiated a purge protocol. If the array cannot control the galaxy, he will use it to erase it. He is uploading a viral amnesia pulse. It will wipe the higher cognitive functions of every species in the core worlds." Lyra froze. "He would lobotomize civilization? He would rather rule a galaxy of mindless drones than lose," Ilara said. "There is only one way to stop the pulse. The physical nodes must be overloaded from the inside." "Then do it," Lyra said. "I am doing it," Ilara said softly. "I have bypassed the safeties on the cooling units in the server room. I am channeling the entire energy output of the capital grid into this console." Lyra realized what she was saying. The room Ilara was sitting in was already filling with smoke. The heat-shielded glass behind her was cracking. "Mother," Lyra said, her voice breaking, "you have to get out. Set the timer and run." "There is no timer. Little star," Ilara said. "It requires a manual bridge. I am the bridge." Flames began to lick the edges of the screen. "Lyra," Ilara said, her eyes filling with tears. "Do not let them write this down as a tragedy. Make it a lesson." "Mother," Lyra screamed. "I love you," Ilara whispered. "Forgive me." The screen turned white. Then, static. A moment later, the long-range sensors detected a massive electromagnetic pulse on Concord Prime. The Ministry of Truth imploded, the explosion swallowing the central spire and the Eidolon array with it. The silence in the atrium was absolute. Lyra stared at the gray static. She felt a phantom pain in her chest, a severance of a bond she hadn't realized she still had. Cassian pulled her into his chest. He did not speak. He held her while she shook, shielding her from the gaze of the room. "Admiral!" the tactical officer shouted, breaking the morning. "High energy signature detected. The Theta Star. It is spiking." Cassian spun around, keeping one arm around Lyra. On the tactical display, the yellow sun of the Theta system was boiling. Solar flares the size of planets were lashing out. "Vrex," Cassian spat. "He knows the mind control failed. He is going for the final option." "What is it?" Lyra asked, wiping her face. "The Sun Eater," Cassian said. "An ancient xeno-weapon buried in the corona. We thought it was a myth. It injects antimatter into the stellar core. It will turn the star into a supernova. It will wipe out this fleet, the Tribunal, and 3 inhabited worlds." "We have to evacuate," the fringe delegate shouted. "Jump to warp. There is no time," Cassian said. "The destabilization is already at 80%. If we warp, the gravity wave will tear us apart." Lyra looked at the display. The star was swelling, turning a sickly violet. "You have a counter," she said. She looked at Cassian. "You told me humans adapt. You told me you built habitats in black holes." Cassian looked at her, then at the tactical officer. "Deploy the weavers," he ordered. "Sir?" The officer hesitated. "We have never tested the lattice on a stellar scale. The feedback could shatter the fleet." "Do it," Cassian roared, "or we all burn." From the hangars of the Voidwalker, 4 massive ships launched. They were not warships. They looked like giant tuning forks, humming with gravitational energy. They sped toward the dying star, taking up positions at the 4 cardinal points of the corona. "Initiate gravity lattice," Cassian commanded. The 4 ships fired. They did not fire beams of destruction. They fired beams of pure darkness, concentrated gravity waves. The beams intersected in the center of the star. "Watch," Cassian whispered to Lyra. The beams began to weave together, creating a net of distorted space-time around the star. The violet swelling hit the net and pushed back, but the gravity lattice held. It was compressing the explosion, forcing the star back into its own gravity well. It was impossible physics. It was art. The humans were not destroying the weapon. They were healing the star. The lattice tightened. The violet hue faded, returning to a stable yellow. The solar flares retracted. The weavers held the star in a chokehold until its core stabilized. "Target neutralized," the tactical officer breathed, disbelief in his voice. "The star is stable. The weapon is crushed inside the core." Cassian exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "They tried to blow up the sun," Lyra said, staring at the screen. "And you just hugged it back together." "We are good at fixing broken things," Cassian said softly. He turned to the tribunal. The delegates were silent, staring at the human fleet with a mixture of terror and awe. They had expected a counterattack. They had expected a Death Star. Instead, they had seen a miracle of preservation. Cassian stepped forward to the center of the room. He looked at the holographic projections of the Concord governors. "Your mind control is gone," Cassian said, his voice hard as iron. "Your superweapon is neutralized. Your history is exposed." He gestured to the fleet outside. "I could order my ships to jump to Concord Prime. I could glass your cities. I could do to you what you did to us. History expects me to be the monster you painted." He looked at Lyra. He saw the grief in her eyes, but also the pride. "But I am tired of history," Cassian said. He looked back at the governors. "We are not going to conquer you. We are going to help you rebuild. We will give you the 0-point energy you tried to steal. We will give you the medical drones. We will give you the truth. But in exchange," he continued, leaning on the table, "the Concord is dissolved. The Cabal surrenders. and a new charter is written, one where no species is ever exiled to the dark again. Governor Harkin stared at him. "You would spare us?" Harkin asked. "After everything?" Cassian took Lyra's hand and raised it. "My partner is a Valorian," he said. "Her mother died to save us. We are already mixed. The purity you fought for is a lie." He looked at the assembly. "The war is over. The work begins." Lyra squeezed his hand. She felt the hum of the ship, the vibration of the victory that wasn't built on bones. She looked at the star on the screen, burning steady and bright. "It is a good start," she whispered. The constellation of the Hyades Gate network was burning, but for the first time in 3 centuries, it was not burning with the fire of conquest. It was burning with the friction of salvation. The final confrontation had shattered the organized battle lines. The conflict was no longer 2 fleets facing off in the void. It was a fractured, chaotic scramble across a dozen star systems. The Concord Cabal, desperate and cornered after the failure of the Sun Eater, had retreated to their fortified gate hubs, locking down the hyperspace lanes and holding entire planetary populations hostage. On the tactical plot of the command shuttle Phantom, Lyra Vale watched the chaos unfold. To her left, a human destroyer maneuvered its massive bulk between a fleeing civilian transport and a Concord orbital defense platform. The human ship took the plasma fire directly on its shields, its hull glowing white-hot, refusing to move until the transport jumped to safety. To her right, a squadron of Valorian interceptors, her own people, flew in perfect formation alongside human drone fighters, strafing the weapon batteries of a Cabal bunker. It was a mess. It was terrifying. And it was the most beautiful thing Lyra had ever seen. "We are approaching the drop zone." A voice crackled over the intercom. Lyra looked toward the cockpit. The pilot was a Zillion named Zek, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and a sarcasm problem. Sitting next to him in the co-pilot seat was Lieutenant Vance, a human officer who looked like he had been ironed into his uniform. "Approaching is a generous term," Vance muttered, gripping his safety harness. "We are falling with style. It is called a tactical descent." Zek clicked, his mandibles twitching with amusement. "You humans are so dramatic. You survive 300 years in a radiation belt, but a little atmospheric turbulence makes you pale. According to regulations," Vance recited, "a tactical descent requires a vector stability of 90%. We are currently at 40. Regulations are for people who don't have to dodge anti-aircraft fire," Zek retorted, banking the shuttle hard to the left to avoid a flak burst. "If I flew by your book, Lieutenant, we would be a smoking crater." "Just fly the ship," Lyra called out, checking her weapon, "and try not to kill us before we reach the target. We are heading for the Eidolon backup hub on the moon of Ethelgard." Intelligence indicated that while Lyra's mother had destroyed the central core, the Cabal had a redundancy, a hardened server farm buried under 3 miles of ice. From there, the surviving Cabal leadership was attempting to coordinate their final stand. The shuttle screamed through the thin atmosphere of the ice moon. Zek slammed the thrusters into reverse, and they hit the landing pad with a bone-jarring thud. "Perfect landing," Zek announced. "You crushed the landing gear," Vance noted, looking at his console. "I said it was a landing, not a parking job," Zek replied. Lyra hit the ramp release. "Move out." Her team spilled onto the ice. It was a motley crew, human shock troopers in black armor, Valorian royal guards in silver, and a handful of fringe mercenaries who looked like they were just happy to be shooting at the government. They breached the main airlock with a shaped charge. The interior of the facility was cold, lit by emergency red strobes. Resistance was fierce but uncoordinated. The Concord guards were fighting for a paycheck. Lyra's team was fighting for a future. They moved through the corridors with a lethal efficiency, the humans taking point with their kinetic shields, the aliens providing suppressing fire. Lyra moved in the center, her mind focused. She wasn't just a soldier today. She was a witness. She had a camera drone hovering over her shoulder, broadcasting everything she saw on an open frequency to the entire galaxy. "We are reaching the command deck," Vance shouted over the roar of pulse fire. "Breach it," Lyra ordered. Vance placed a charge on the blast door. 3, 2, 1. The door blew inward. Lyra stepped through the smoke, her pistol raised. The command deck was a circular room lined with screens displaying the collapsing Concorde fronts. In the center, huddled around a tactical table, were the 5 remaining members of the Cabal. They looked small. Without their armies, without their lies, they were just old politicians in expensive suits. "Freeze," Lyra commanded. The Cabal members looked up. One of them, a high-ranking minister named Krell, reached for a sidearm. "Don't," Lyra said. She didn't shoot. She simply pointed to the drone hovering beside her. "You are live, Krell," she said, cold and sharp. 3 billion people are watching you. Do you want to die as a martyr or surrender as a criminal?" Krell froze. He looked at the camera. He saw the red recording light. He realized that the narrative he had tried to control for decades had finally been seized by someone else. He dropped the gun. "It is over," Lyra said. While Lyra secured the ground, Cassian Rook was fighting a different kind of battle in the high orbit of Concorde Prime. He stood alone in the observation lounge of the Supreme Marshal, the flagship of the Concorde Navy. The room was opulent, decorated with tapestries depicting the glorious exile of humanity. Across from him stood Supreme Marshal Krov. He was an old warrior, scarred and dignified, holding a glass of wine as if the burning fleet outside the window was merely a fireworks display. "You have won the field, Admiral," Krov said. His voice was calm. "My forces are surrendering. The gate network is yours. Then order the stand down," Cassian said. "Stop the bleeding." Krov turned to face him. "I can do more than that," he said. "I can give you the keys to the kingdom." Krov walked to a desk and picked up a heavy golden command rod. "The Cabal is finished," Krov said. "They were politicians. Weak. But the structure of the Concorde, the military, the bureaucracy, the trade routes, that is necessary. Chaos is the enemy. Cassian, you know this. You run an empire." He held out the rod. "Take the title of High Chancellor," Krov offered. "We will maintain the hierarchy. You will be the face of the new order, a human face. We will tell the galaxy that humanity has returned to guide us. We will keep the peace, you and I." Cassian looked at the rod. It represented absolute power. It represented order. It was everything a ruler should want. He looked out the window at the human ships using their own bodies to shield alien transports. "You do not get it," Cassian said softly. Krov frowned. "It is a pragmatic offer. You save lives. You get the throne. What is the objection?" "The objection," Cassian said, stepping closer, "is that you think peace is about control." He looked Krov in the eye. "When we were in the Rim, we didn't survive because we had a hierarchy. We survived because we told each other the truth about how much food we had left. We survived because we trusted the person next to us not to steal the air." Cassian knocked the golden rod from Krov's hand. It clattered to the floor. "Exile taught us the cost of trading truth for comfort," Cassian declared. "I will not put a human mask on your oppression. I am not here to rule the Concorde. I am here to bury it." Krov's face hardened. "Then you bury us all," he whispered. A siren began to wail throughout the ship. Not an alarm, a countdown. What did you do? Cassian demanded, grabbing Krov by the collar. The Xeno weapon was not just in the sun. Krov smiled, blood staining his teeth. We had a secondary trigger. A dimensional fracture device linked to the Eidolon hub. If the Cabal falls, the hub overloads. It will create a singularity that will swallow this system. Cassian threw him aside and tapped his comms. Lyra, he shouted, get out of there! The hub is a bomb! On the ice moon, the command deck turned red. The screen shifted from tactical maps to a single pulsing countdown. Singularity collapse. 2 minutes. Lyra heard Cassian's warning, but she knew she couldn't run. The singularity wouldn't just kill her team, it would destroy the moon, the fleet in orbit, and the humanitarian corridors. Zek, take the team and get to the shuttle, Lyra ordered. What about you? Vance asked, looking terrified. I have to stop the countdown, Lyra said, running to the main console. She shoved the Cabal ministers toward the exit. Get them out! Go! Vance hesitated, then grabbed Zek. We have to go! They scrambled out the blast doors. Lyra was alone. She stared at the console. It was Valorian tech, complex and encrypted. She began to type furiously, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. Access denied. Access denied. She didn't have the codes. Her mother was dead. The Cabal members didn't know them. It was a hardware lock. She looked at the center of the room. A massive cooling column was vibrating violently. Inside, she could see the dark energy of the singularity beginning to swirl. There was a manual override lever at the base of the column. It was behind the radiation shielding. Lyra knew what it meant. To pull that lever, she had to enter the containment field. The radiation would be lethal within seconds. She didn't hesitate. She locked the blast doors from the inside so no one could come back for her. Cassian, she said into her comms. Her voice was steady. I am going for the manual override. No! Cassian's voice was a raw sound of panic. Lyra, don't! I am inbound. I am entering the atmosphere. You won't make it, Lyra said. She walked toward the containment field. The heat was already blistering. Cassian, listen to me. When this is over, make sure it lasts. Don't let them forget. Lyra! She stepped through the shield. The pain was immediate. It felt like her skin was being peeled away. Her vision blurred. She stumbled toward the lever. It was 10 feet away, 5 feet. Her legs gave out. She fell to her knees. She crawled. The radiation was cooking her internal organs. She couldn't breathe. She reached up. Her hand brushed the handle of the lever. It was cold metal. She didn't have the strength to pull it down. I am sorry, she whispered to the empty room. The blast door exploded. Lyra flinched, expecting the fire. Instead, a black blur moved past her. It was Cassian. He had not landed the shuttle. He had jumped from the dropship, using his gravity boots to smash through the facility's roof and down the elevator shaft. His armor was smoking. He crashed into the containment field. The force of the radiation knocked him back, cracking his visor. He roared, a sound of pure defiance, and lunged forward. He grabbed Lyra, pulling her body against his chest, shielding her with his armor. Together, he screamed. He placed his hand over hers on the lever. Lyra felt his strength flood into her. It wasn't just physical strength. It was the sheer, stubborn refusal to die that defined his species. On 3, Cassian yelled. 1, 2, 3. They pulled. The lever slammed down. The groaning of the machine stopped. The swirling dark energy in the column froze, then imploded with a deafening crack, vanishing into nothingness. The silence that followed was heavy. Cassian fell back against the console, sliding to the floor, pulling Lyra into his lap. The containment field flickered and died. Lyra looked up at him. Her skin was burned, her vision gray. Cassian's face was pale, blood running from his nose and ears. You are an idiot, Lyra wheezed. I am a punctually idiot, Cassian gasped. He checked her vitals on his wrist scanner. We are alive, he said, sounding surprised. The armor took the brunt of it. We are going to spend a month in a regeneration tank. But we are alive. Lyra rested her head on his chest. She listened to his heart. It was beating fast, a drum of war slowing down into a rhythm of peace. Is it over? She asked. Cassian looked at the screen above them. The countdown was gone. The tactical map showed white flags appearing across the system. Yes, he said, it is over. 3 months later, the signing of the new charter took place on Station Opsis 4, the same station where the war had almost begun with a bomb. The repairs were still visible, scars of welded metal that the architects had chosen to leave exposed. The grand hall was full. Humans, Valorians, Uromi, Zillions, every species of the former Concord sat together. There were no raised platforms. Everyone sat at a round table. Lyra stood at the podium. She wore a simple white dress covering the faint silvery scars that still traced her neck and arms, marks of the radiation she had survived. She looked at the assembly. We do not sign this treaty to forget the past, she said, her voice clear and amplified. We sign it to remember. We remember the exile. We remember the silence. And we remember that the only thing that ended the war was the courage to speak the truth. She looked at Cassian, who sat with the other delegates. He was not wearing a crown. He was wearing his dress uniform, simple and unadorned. This charter guarantees that no civilization will ever again be silenced. Lyra continued, it guarantees that power will always be accountable to the people it serves. It is not a promise of paradise. It is a promise of work. She signed the digital pad. Then Cassian stood up. He walked to the podium. He signed next to her name. The human empire is dead, he announced. Long live the Galactic Alliance. The applause was not polite. It was raucous. It was messy. It was real. Later that evening, Lyra found Cassian on the observation deck. He was looking out at the stars, a glass of that terrible engine coolant moonshine in his hand. He looked tired, but the haunted look was gone from his eyes. You gave up the title, Lyra said, leaning against the railing beside him. You are just Admiral again. Being an emperor gave me a headache, Cassian said. And the hat was ridiculous. He offered her the glass. She took a sip and grimaced. Still tastes like poison, she said. It is an acquired taste. He grinned. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the ships docking and departing. The traffic was fluid, a mix of human and alien designs. Do you think it will last? Lyra asked quietly. Cassian looked at her. He reached out and traced the scar on her jawline with his thumb. Peace is not a building. Lyra, it is a garden. You have to water it. You have to pull the weeds. It will get messy again. People will forget. Greed will come back. He took her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. But we rewrote the myth, he said. We proved that the monster can be the savior. And we proved that the princess can save herself. That story is out there now. They can't delete it. Lyra looked at him. She felt the scars on her skin, the memories of the torture, the fear, and the grief. But she also felt his hand. I am not a princess anymore, she said. No, Cassian agreed. You are a politician, which is much worse. Lyra laughed. It was the same laugh that had startled him in the interrogation room, bright, sharp, and defying the darkness. And you are a retired pirate, she teased, I prefer freelance humanitarian, Cassian corrected. He pulled her closer. The gap between them, once filled with 300 years of void and hatred, was gone. What do we do now? Lyra asked. Cassian looked at the infinite field of stars. We live, he said. We make mistakes. We argue about where to eat dinner. He kissed her. It wasn't a desperate kiss on the edge of death. It was a slow, deliberate kiss. A promise of a tomorrow that didn't have to be stolen. And if the darkness comes back? Lyra whispered against his lips. Cassian smiled, and his eyes reflected the light of 1,000,000 free worlds. Then we turn on the lights. The camera pulled back, through the window of the station past the hulls of the ships, drifting further and further away until the station was just a speck of light in the Hyades cluster. The galaxy spun on, vast and indifferent, but changed. The history books would be written and rewritten 1,000 times. Tyrants would rise and fall, but in the silence between the stars, a new truth held firm, that the dark was not an exile, but a canvas. And for the first time in history, the brush was in the hands of the brave.